everyone. This is Naruto. We're just gonna start because we have almost 350 people. I'm here today with Chase. He's a very good friend of mine, working at Offchain Labs as partnership manager, leading all the partnership efforts at Offchain. Yeah, so Chase, do you want to go around with your brief introduction, what you've been up to, and everything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Naruto. Like you said, I'm on the partnerships team at Offchain Labs. Certainly don't lead partnerships. It takes a village. For those of you that don't know, Offchain Labs is the builders of the Arbitrum tech stack. So, Arbitrum One, Arbitrum Nova, Arbitrum Orbit, if you're familiar. Particularly, my focus is on infrastructure success. So, with our existing partners, how do we build, grow, and maintain those relationships, make sure that teams like Avail are hitting their KPIs, and in doing so, that's going to grow the broader pie, right? I think this was one of the things that, Offchain Labs did early on that was a little
For
bit
sure.
unique from a lot of other ecosystems in that we sort of took this success function and we said, all right, we've done a lot of business development work to get you to decide to build on Arbitrum or build your own Orbit chain. But let's make sure that you're also successful once you've launched and once you've made that decision. And I think that's something that a lot of teams sort of lost sight of in
Yep.
like the BD race of the 2021 bull cycle.
For sure, for sure. And I've been always a big fan of Arbitrum. Um, I've probably looked into you guys more than any other chain, honestly saying. So very excited, to kick off this conversation. Chase, I know you pretty much. We met at Eat Denver. It was, nice, nice party with some of our friends. But do you want to introduce on how your journey started with off chain? What are your major involvement right now, and what did you do before Offchain as well? How did you just end up here?
Yeah, absolutely. Naruto and I became fast friends at an event at ETH Denver, so it's great to reconnect.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was a fun one. I started in crypto. Actually, I think my 4-year anniversary of working in crypto was yesterday. I was looking through like my old
Very good.
emails. So I
Hmm.
started June 2020 at a research firm called Token Metrics. If people are around for the 2017 ICO days, that was
Yep.
founded by Ian Bellina. And I started off as actually an unpaid intern. COVID, we were in the depths of COVID and I needed any sort of job to put on my resume. Found this unpaid internship at a fully remote company. Obviously, everything shut down during COVID now. Um, and really didn't know Ethereum from Dogecoin at the time.
For sure.
Began working on the customer success side. We were a research company, so I had access to a lot of really good research, and we were doing some interesting stuff with machine learning and how that could predict price movements and whatnot. So I started sort of dog fooding the product, investing on my own, just dove deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole as many do.
Mhm.
Worked there for 2.5 years. Eventually, started working in more of a research role, but also did business development functions, other things as well. They eventually launched a venture fund. By the time I left, I was the lead analyst at the VC. They were a $10 million fund, made some solid investments both before and after my time there. Um, After that, I did business development for a startup called Magna. They're sort of like a Carta for tokens. They're a YC company, raised $15 million from Tiger Global. I was doing business development for them, which is sort of how Naruto and I met, was through a former Magna colleague. Um, and then about 6 months ago, I joined the Offchain Labs team. Sort of funny story. I actually interviewed with Offchain twice. The first time, obviously, didn't work out, but I made it to the final round, and then a new role opened up, and they reached out again, which was very serendipitous. And still glad that shout out to Bellman on our talent team and Luke for reaching back out after that.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good journey, especially I've heard a lot from friends, Harrison or other people that you did a great work at Magna. So definitely there. And then, like you're killing it at Offchain for sure. So, like let's jump into more about what you're building in like the Arbitrum ecosystem, what you guys are trying to solve right now. And the major question is like, it's a big L2. The L2 space is a lot like right now. There are probably 55 L2s that are alive, and then there are probably like close to 40 that are coming up, something like this. I saw it on the L2 beat. So how do you think like Arbitrum set itself apart with the features and like how you guys attract the devs and the users? What is the major success point here for you guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me sort of split it off into our three core products. The first is Arbitrum One. That's the main DeFi chain you think of when you hear Arbitrum. DeFi heavy, obviously, there's other use cases as well. So this was the first Arbitrum to launch. It's still to this day the only optimistic rollup with working fraud proofs. And I had this conversation last week at Consensus actually, where people said, "Do people care about security?" Or who cares about security? And I said, people, basically it's people who matter. Like when you're dealing with millions and millions of dollars, these small minutia of does this have a proving system or not, that really matters. On top of that, Arbitrum One has now become the most liquid. It now has more monthly active addresses than Ethereum, which was a very recent development as of last week. It's also the fastest network, or the fastest L2. It's 250 millisecond block times. And when you compare that to competitors who are 1 and 2 seconds, we're posting 8 blocks to their 1. So if you're standing at a cash register, standing there for 2 seconds might be a little bit awkward, whereas 250 milliseconds is very natural. That's used to what you're seeing when you're waiting for like a Visa transaction to process. And obviously the ecosystem of builders is extremely collaborative. GMX, for example, who is one of the flagship DeFi protocols on Arbitrum, they have 80 plus teams that are building in or integrated or building with them in one way or another. They've been an extremely helpful team for the Arbitrum ecosystem as a whole, and also projects who are building in the ecosystem. Next, we have Arbitrum Nova. We like to say that Arbitrum Nova sort of pioneered Alt-DA almost by accident, because gaming teams need more reliable fees. Like if you're going to charge $1 for this Fortnite skin and gas fees go to $1.50, then that's going to create a bad user experience. Or if you're subsidizing gas fees, you're losing 50% of your margin. You're at a 50% loss rather. So we invented the data availability committee. We call this AnyTrust technology, where essentially you have a committee of trusted validators who are accepting the data from your chain, accepting your transaction data, as opposed to posting it to the expensive Ethereum L1. And again, this is pre-EIP 4844 days. So transactions on Nova are about half a cent compared to, at the time, 50 cents on Arbitrum One. So that was a significant difference. And again, they're still more reliable. You just have to count on one of these parties being trustworthy. And then finally, we have Arbitrum Orbit. Arbitrum Orbit is sort of where we spawned the Arbitrum is freedom narrative. That's because it's highly, highly customizable. You can have your own custom gas token. So for example, we probably haven't done a good enough job of advertising this, but Degen chain, which is an L3 on top of Base, as many know, is actually an Arbitrum Orbit chain. And the reason they made the decision to go with Arbitrum is because we are the only stack with a custom gas token. Only stack with operating chains. Yeah.
That's understandable. And I've seen Orbit taking off really well. Like there's a big adoption right there. So that's the next question for you. Like, what are like the projects and vertical across the whole Web3 that are building on top of Orbit? What are you more excited about? What do you think, because I've been seeing that you guys are too much going into gaming side as well, or some kind of like anime chain. I think you guys have an anime chain right now, right? So what are you most excited about?
Yeah, we went back and forth on Anime Chain in the Twitter comments yesterday, didn't we? Um,
Yep.
so I'd say we've seen traction across gaming, DeFi, and community slash consumer as well. So essentially all the sectors, in my opinion. So gaming to me is particularly interesting, and this was probably the earliest use cases we saw. And again, it's partially for that fee stabilization where you don't have to worry about what's going on elsewhere on the chain. There's a huge NFT mint going on that's creating a bad experience for your players. Everything is sorry, everything is isolated to your block space. Uh, with the custom gas token, it's particularly interesting as well because it's sort of like you go to Chuck E. Cheese and you play the games with your Chuck E. Cheese tokens, and it's all exists within this one ecosystem, even if it's a you know 50 or 500 different games that you can play. Zai is probably the first example that comes to mind of an L3 orbit chain. They've done extremely well, and Sobi is crushing it on there.
Sobe is crushing it. I was
Yeah.
gonna say that.
Yeah, and then DeFi use cases, Arbitrum has proven itself as the DeFi hub outside of
Mhm.
Ethereum L1, and even like the home of different types of exchanges like perps dexes. So we've
Okay.
seen some really interesting use cases with DeFi, and there's a few that haven't been announced yet that I'm really, really excited about as well. One team that I will mention is a DeFi perps dex called Rhea, which is an Orbit
Mhm.
chain, sort of like an Avo competitor, if you will. But they attracted $200 million in their LGE, which is a liquidity generation event, which was essentially sending USDC to a contract. But $200 million is nothing to cough at. But what they're doing in their chain, which is quite interesting, is they have a unified liquidity mechanism where all the $200 million can be used across spot dexes, perps dexes, different. It can be used for margin on these perps dexes. It's really, really interesting primitive. Excited to see what that team cooks up. And getting into the community side of things, obviously, Degen chain, lots of culture, tons and tons of activity. If you look at L2 Beat, it's usually Degen chain, Arbitrum One, Base, and Ethereum as the top four chains by TPS or overall activity. And Galaxy, that's the questing platform, just announced their plans to launch an Orbit chain last week.
Okay.
Consensus, they're going to bring more of their questing activities onto their
Mhm.
chain, which is really, really exciting. And based on the internal metrics that they've come up with, they think that they can hit 100 million transactions almost right off the bat in the first month.
The 100 million is actually a lot, so definitely interested. I have not looked into Galaxy so far, so probably this is going to be my weekend homework. So I got a follow up question on community side. What do you when people reach out to you, which is I'm pretty sure you get like hundreds of DMs every day on Telegram. Um, when people from your community Arbitrum reach out to you, what are your thoughts if they want to build on top of Arbitrum? What kind of support do they get from you or from Arbitrum? Like, if some of our listeners want to start something of their own, any kind of, DeFi project, some gaming thing, some different kind of anime thing. What are your like, number one, how would you choose them? What do you look into them while you're choosing? Number two, what you can support to them. What kind of support you can give to them.
Yeah, that's a really important question, and I'm glad you touched on this. So, like I said, it's basically my role is almost entirely ecosystem facing. Again, how do we help you grow your metrics? Whether that's through, hey, I see you're building in parallel with this protocol or this app, or you in this game are doing very similar things, or hey, you're an embedded wallet. this game has a somewhat clunky user experience because someone has to download a MetaMask first. Like, let's do some matchmaking. So, big part of my job is trying to understand like a high level roadmap of everybody, particularly on the infrastructure side of things. But I do what I can to cover the whole ecosystem as well. And then, not to mention, there's a whole there's basically two of me because we have my coworker, 0x Win Moon, who does the DeFi success side of things. I would say there's two of me. There's probably two and a half of me because that guy is a killer. Really, really impressive. Great. He's been working in Arbitrum DeFi for basically as long as Arbitrum DeFi has existed, and he's a trader and a degen, and has some really, really creative ideas for how to help teams grow their ecosystem. So, intros is one way. Co-marketing support is one way. Maybe we can get some Arbitrum builders on the hot take series. That would be pretty awesome.
For sure.
And then, of course, we have an amazing integration engineering team who can offer technical support as well.
That's yeah, I think those are like the most important things needed when you're building on top of any kind of project. I think a lot of like companies struggle with that, but I think Arbitrum has a good approach there. Um, okay, so let's move a little bit forward to why Avail and Arbitrum. What is the inspiration for our partnership? What are the key goals that you want to achieve? What do you expect from Avail? That kind of sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's been great to work with you guys. Kyle Rojas, he and I have known each other for a couple years now, going back to each of our previous roles, actually. And then you and I met very serendipitously, like not really through work at all. So you guys have been a total pleasure to work with. I know that our engineering teams are getting along great. What I want to see through this partnership is, we continue to believe that the Arbitrum stack is freedom. So, for example, other chains will make if you want to participate in different ecosystem incentives, like the super chain, for example, you have to be governed by the OP token. We
Yep.
have very, very little interest in enforcing that on you. We want you to build your own block state space. Frankly, we want you to push the limit of what's possible with the Arbitrum Nitro stack or the Arbitrum stack, and adding different DA layers, different consensus mechanisms.
For sure.
Maybe even bringing in new execution environments, which I haven't even gotten the chance to talk about stylus yet. But we want things to be customized as much as possible, and we want people to push the limits of what is possible. But yeah, I would also love to flip that question back to you. And what are you excited about with the Avail Arbitrum collab?
Yeah, so what I know is I think I saw someone's tweet recently, and that was like there are a lot of L3s coming up with Arbitrum Stack, and the whole goal of Avail right now is to unify the Web3. The idea is that there's so much user fragmentation, there's so much liquidated fragmentation, and how do we like minimize it? So basic idea there is we are using Avail Nexus, which a lot of people we are building Avail Nexus, which a lot of people don't know about right now, is a permissionless framework which basically unifies the Web3. How it does is like it's a zero knowledge, like ZK proof based coordination rollup. So it's like a verification hub for every rollup, and the whole idea here is that you get a single proof aggregation, or you get a single proof for every other proof for the rollups, and this makes the whole user experience very seamless for like a way for Arbitrum, for OP, for anything else. So those are like my major things, and I definitely want like more Arbitrum L3s coming up because they will also help us, push the limits of what Avail can do. So definitely interested in all different kind of things, honestly, and that's why I like Arbitrum because there's so many people building on it right now. Especially like for example, Zai is building the whole gaming paradigm, so I think they have like potential to shift that narrative for Arbitrum, and I think you guys are working with Treasure DAO right now. I'm not exactly sure, but Treasure DAO is one of uh, early projects that I looked into. So definitely excited there. Uh, but yeah, those are like the major things. Feel free to add something. We can move to like next things.
Yeah, no, it's cool to be able to talk about this. I don't know if we've been able to actually have like a chat about more broadly, what is the overall vision for this. So it was cool to hear you talk about that. And yeah,
Yep.
definitely big shout out to Treasure. They were one of the original Arbitrum gaming teams, and they were one of the first people to take the primitive of magic. Treasure games are going to
Yep.
be paid out in the magic token. So it's sort of that Chuck E. Cheese analogy that I gave earlier. So it's a natural next step for them to, own their own block space and build an L2.
For
And
sure.
also shout out to Smoothie Williams and the Senko team, because those guys are cooking.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so like let's move a little bit to like modularism. Like we all are moving to a modular Web3 future. But so many chains like this multi-chain future, it leads to fragmentation. So what are your like thoughts about how Arbitrum is approaching to make these things easier for builders and especially like end users? Like, do you think there's something you guys are doing on it? Making it a little bit easier for end user to like not click too many steps to do a simple transaction, things like that.
Yeah. So I'd say there's largely two main things. The first is chain clusters. And this is in a very, very early stages of research. Maybe if there's like a description, we can link our chief scientist, Ed Felton's basically research paper considerations for chain clusters. This is essentially um, opportunities for chains to opt in to a cluster where you're sharing security, you're sharing other resources, and there's simplified message passing, and asset transfers between these chains. There are different considerations for this, but I think the best example is actually Treasure again, who they want to have their main Treasure chain, and maybe there will be games that exist directly on that L2. But on top of that, they want to have each individual game be its own L3. So they obviously have very, very big grand visions, and they're going to, get some of the best Web3 games in the space. In my opinion, they're doing a great job with that as of now on the BD side. But their vision is that each game is going to grow so large that each individual one is going to have to be its own L2, L3, but they're going to be secured as a chain cluster. That's number one. Another thing I want to mention is Arbitrum's and Offchain Labs' sort of thesis from the beginning has always been, ship first, announce second, and a lot of people like to flip that on its head because it,
Yep.
does certain things to token prices that it
For
usually
sure.
work out pretty well, and then sometimes under deliver on the shipping side. I think we've sort of taken the opposite approach, and it's worked in the long run.
Hmm.
The second thing is our work with Espresso to build a decentralized sequencer. So they're doing a great
Okay.
job there. They're building a essentially sequencer marketplace that is going to allow for seamless interoperability between chains, because these sequencers are going to be able to scan and see, okay, there's all these transactions coming in from each chain. Let's just do it in one fell swoop. And hey, maybe we can take transaction A here, or token swap A here to token swap B here, and we can have it sequenced by one sequencer, and put it in the same block.
Interesting. I think, yeah, I know about Espresso doing something like sequencer marketplace, but I haven't seen a lot of teams or like a lot of orgs coming up with that idea. So that's pretty interesting to me. Not sure how they're doing it honestly, but I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, don't want to take people away from your podcast, but I did see a Bankless episode today
Okay.
of a Polygon. They're doing more debates now because the Justin Drake and Tully one went so well. But
Yep.
they did a Polygon ag layer versus Espresso decentralized sequencer episode,
Oh,
which
that's pretty
I
interesting.
haven't listened yet, but I'll definitely tune in. Another
Uh,
thought that
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but the way you can swap within a wallet, why can't you bridge within a wallet as well? Like I use my in wallet, like my in Rabby swap feature
Hmm.
almost exclusively at this point because I don't want to go to the trouble of like going to a 1 inch or a Uniswap or the list goes on.
Hmm.
Also, Uniswap is now taking bips on the front end.
Yep.
Why can't I just have a list of different bridging options inside of my wallet?
For sure. I think that would be a nice user case. We definitely need some way for these wallets to interact with the bridge contracts on the end side. But it might be a nice idea to like add that kind of feature where you just list out what are the bridges and how to actually connect with them and swap it directly. Not sure if someone has ever thought about it. I hope someone does.
Yeah,
Okay.
same here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a nice conversation. We almost have 2,800 people listening to us right now, so which is pretty good. Like, generally we have like 2,500 people, so we've definitely surpassed this. And like we have some people from the community listening, some friends listening, so going good there. So now because we have so many people, I want to go back to the idea of like Web3 gaming and anime chain. There's so much that Arbitrum is putting there, but like, what's the next big thing for you for Arbitrum there? Like, what are you guys looking at? 2 years down the line, the future of it. What do you think there?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking. So the exciting thing about each one of these individual chains is the chain operator can do almost whatever they want with them. So anime chain, their grand vision is to put anything Web3, any anime IP that wants to go on chain, it should start on anime chain because it's in the name. And it's the gas token is the anime token. So it's a very natural next step. Azuki has been the crypto anime brand for as long as it's existed, and that goes for
Yep.
Senko, that goes for Treasure, Zai, Rhea, uh, you know, Galaxy. The list goes on. The chain operators have all the freedom in the world to do what they want with it, which gives the Offchain Labs team a ton of breathing room to say, hey, how do we make this stack better and how do we improve it for all these other people? We now have almost 50 chains that have publicly announced how many people have publicly announced building with the Orbit stack, and I expect that to double by the end of the year at least. um, so the most pressing things that we have updates for, and these are proposals in the DAO forums now. The first is stylus. So the 3 word pitch is we're bringing Rust to Arbitrum. This is an extremely huge unlock. It lowers computation and memory fees by 50 and 100x. It's going to make it way cheaper to build. It's going to unlock new use cases that aren't possible in other Rust environments like Near or Solana because we're actually adding a whole nother virtual machine,
Hmm.
a WASM virtual machine. So you'll be able to use Solidity and Rust. Imagine V1 of your app is written in Solidity and V2 is written in Rust, and they can communicate totally seamlessly. So some of the DeFi teams that have started building on Stylus are seeing some of the best like price execution and cheapest fees compared to the existing chains that we've ever seen, or excuse me, the existing apps that we've ever seen. So that's really exciting. You know, if you think about people on our BD team who are like convincing devs, hey, this is why you should build on Arbitrum. I've seen estimates of like 20 to 50,000 Solidity developers in the world, and I've seen estimates of 2 million Rust developers in the world. So
Yep.
you're talking about 100xing the total addressable market of developers who can now build on Arbitrum. And I don't even know what what multiple to apply to it, but the number of use cases and the number of possibilities that
Increase.
possible things that can be built are some multiple higher than what they are today. The next thing is Bold, which is furthering Arbitrum on its path to becoming a stage 2 rollup as laid out by Vitalik's rollup stages roadmap. This is Bold is going to essentially decentralize the validator set on Arbitrum chains. So anyone who is building a rollup can take on any of these upgrades, actually, including Bold. So anyone will now be able to validate an Arbitrum chain. Only one proposer is needed at a time, but anyone is able to put up an economic stake if they so like, and if this passes through the Arbitrum DAO as well. The last thing, which I think is really, really exciting, is time boost. And this is something that we haven't talked about a ton because, again, it's still in fairly early research stages, but hopefully coming soon. Time boost is essentially a transaction ordering policy, which allows for certain spots in a block to be auctioned off. So if you want some arbitrage opportunity, some liquidation is happening, and you really, really, really want it, today the Arbitrum sequencer is first in, first out. So you have to basically get lucky, or you have to have some really, really expensive hardware to be the one to, earn that opportunity or win that opportunity, win that arbitrage.
So basically, pay more, right? Sorry. So I was just saying, like, it's time boost is something like pay more in order to get your transaction first.
Exactly. It's a little bit more democratic, we believe, because there might be, just one opportunity that doesn't require you to have enterprise grade hardware that you'll be able to auction. You'll be able to participate in the auction and then, win that arbitrage, or whatever it may be that exists on chain. And this is an opportunity for both Arbitrum One and any Orbit chain that chooses to adopt time boost to increase their sequencer revenue, which is really, really exciting. And again, Arbitrum blocks are 250 milliseconds, so this is going to be happening repeatedly a lot.
So do you know when time boost will be live or for someone to use, or do you have any timeline for that, or you can share some alpha?
Yeah, I'll take a quote from our friend Harrison and say soon TM.
For sure.
Yeah.
We'll do that then. Okay. Yeah, and he also says we're all here for Chuck, which is funny. Okay, cool. So moving on to like the next idea is I want to know, like, while Arbitrum was building and since you joined, there are always things going wrong and right, while you're building projects, while other teams are building on top of you. So what are some like technical challenges, or what are like some ecosystem BD side of challenges that you seem to face, or like what users seem to face, and how like you guys actually solved it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can speak obviously more to the business and partnerships side than I can to the technical side. Although I know that those guys are, those teams are working extremely hard and have done an extremely, extremely good job. We actually have a bug of the week section in our all hands call that is always really funny, and it's sort of like I know 1% of the challenges that these people face, and it's really incredible to see what they're able to do and in an unbelievably quick amount of time able to solve these like challenges that would take me 3 hours to even begin to understand. So on the partnership side, I guess you would say like people often want things done tomorrow, and this isn't always possible. And like, for example, you just asked like, what is the timeline for time boost? It's like, well, this is this is not an easy thing to have an auction taking place, however frequently a day. So managing those expectations is always really important. And then when issues do happen, trying to understand when technical issues do happen, trying to understand what happens from our technical team, trying to distill it down to the partners and, helping them locate an answer or helping them think of a workaround or helping them with phrasing to their community. Those are sort of the fire drills that I have to deal with on occasionally. How about you guys at Avail? Is there anything anything worth talking about? You can get technical. It just might go over my head.
Yeah. So we are still like, pre mainnet, and there's still a lot of companies or projects building on top of Avail. They are integrating Avail. So we definitely get a lot of questions on, how we can integrate this feature, how we can add this feature. And from me as a DevRel, my only thing is like, let them, like I cannot actually like deploy the mainnet for them, but what I can do for them is get the right answer as soon as possible. So these are the things like, on the sides of dev or BD, or like the mix of both of them, which becomes like DevRel thing. Is my goal is to the response time should be very low. So whatever they need, whatever resources they need, I can get them in probably less than few hours. That's my basic idea on like helping them, because there are always technical difficulties when you're building something. If you're integrating with some chain, or if you're integrating with some wallet, how I can reduce the time for the back and forth, how I can actually like control the whole idea there. So definitely these things. And then also like making sure that every partner of us, they are feeling comfortable whenever they're talking to us, whatever they can do while they're integration. um, we are approachable to them. All these different ideas come out to be like what I aim to do while I'm working here, so that no one has issues. So basically these kind of fire drills, you can say, like right now we're still in the phases, but like these are like the fire drills that we have.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think your job is sort of like mine, except I
Yep.
could never do it because I'm not technical.
No, I think you do a great job at Arbitrum, or Offchain. Definitely have heard a lot from Kyle, so I understand like how much you've been up to. But yeah, you know, uh, I think those were like my major questions. I think one thing I'm very sure about is that once we have Avail DA mainnet, and once we have Nexus, there are like so much growth opportunity between like Arbitrum and Avail, which I'm really excited about. And then of course, like I'm gonna probably see you at different events, and we're probably gonna do a lot of things together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I look forward to cooking with you guys and seeing you at the next conference. It'll be great.
Yeah, for sure. ECC would probably be the next conference for me, and we'll, if I get to see you, I'll probably see you. But yeah, if like the final thing, if someone needs to reach out to you, or they want to build on top of Arbitrum, what's the best way? I know, like anyone can probably tag Arbitrum Twitter account, or tweet about it, but what do you think is the best way there?
Yeah. They can reach out to me. My DMs are open on Twitter at allred_chase. So last name underscore first name. Feel free to reach out there. The at Arbitrum account. There's also at Arbitrum Devs. Our team tries to be as available as possible. So, if you need to reach out to me, you can DM me on Twitter. I try to get back as quickly as possible. And maybe even going through Naruto at Avail. No, I don't get your DMs flooded, but no, please reach out. If I'm not the right person to talk to, I'm happy to steer you guys in the right direction.
For sure, for sure. And we've almost hit like 3.3K listeners, so that's pretty good. But I think that's we've talked a lot, and I really enjoyed like talking to you. Thanks for being here, Chase. And gonna be closing the stream. If you have any last few words, feel free to share it across.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thank you so much, Naruto, for having me. Look out for more Arbitrum Orbit chains on the way. Look out for Arbitrum chains with Avail DA, and definitely be looking out for Stylus. The Stylus testnet is live today, so devs are able to go in and build using, Rust on the EVM, Rust and Solidity. Please play around with it, break it, let us know what's wrong with it, tell us how it's great.
Yep.
Yeah,
For sure.
definitely.
For sure.
Rust is coming to Arbitrum, so we're excited about that multi-VM.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about that one. I've been doing Rust for a while now, so there's a big Rust community, and definitely very very excited about where you guys are headed. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us. I'm gonna be closing the stream, and we'll see you next week with a different idea. Bye.
Peace.